So if everyone can take a seat, if there is one, there's a few spare seats at the front. I know it's a tradition in United Union that everyone fills the room to the back, and then has to be dragged screaming to the front. Yeah. So welcome to tonight's meeting. It's organised by the United Left in Unite, and it's putting the planet before profit. We've had some brilliant contributions and motions and composites today, this morning, at the conference. And we all know that this is probably... It's not on.
It's close to the You're close to the mic, Jim. We use the rubbing mic.
He needs to get back on the terrace.
And we all know. Right, just for that, I'm starting all over again. No, we had some really good debates, contributions this morning. It's probably, I think, the most important issue, I think, that the trade union and our members and their families are going to face, which is climate emergency, climate breakdown. So we've got a great list of speakers up here, but first of all, we've got a couple of comrades from sister unions here tonight, and I'd just like, first of all, if Dave Allen, the Secretary of the National United Left, would introduce a very important comrade from Unison. Dave.
Thanks very much, Jim, and thanks very much, comrades, for coming here tonight. A really excellent turnout. The United Left is still here, leading Unite the Union, and we are working with the new General Secretary, Sharon, to build a progressive movement going forward. But although tonight is about the Green New Deal, it was too important an opportunity in this not to invite comrades from Unison, from the left group in Unison, Time for a Real Change, to come and speak to us tonight about left unity, about how Unite and Unison can unite going forward to give leadership to the TUC, the Labour Party, and the whole Labour movement. And we have, first of all, the speaker tonight was addressed as, advertised as Angela Egan, who is the Vice President of Unison. But Andrea wanted to make sure that Paul Holmes, who is the elected President of Unison, but has not been able to take up his position because of issues going on within Unison, to address us. So, Paul, please, in the spirit of comradeship, unite of solidarity to the comrades in Unison, please address us.
Thank you very much. I'm probably the greenest person in the room, not the naivest, but I've never touched a vehicle with a motor in my whole life, so I'm ahead of most people in this room. But I ain't come to talk about the greens. People here better equipped to do that, but obviously I've got paternal greens on that subject. I've been an NEC member of Unison for 14 years, and I've been a steward for 46 years, and the branch secretary of a branch with 10,000 members for 32 years now. And I took in the General Secretary election last year and got the highest vote a Labour members ever got in the General Secretary election. If we hadn't have had 3 candidates, I'd have won that General Secretary election. And just a brief history really, that caused a bit of ruction on the left in Unison, because I think I got 35 or 36% of the vote. It was the first time for 25 years that the sitting candidate hadn't, or the candidate of the full-time officer hadn't got 50%. And the campaign was so successful in Unison that we decided as a body that we'd go forward into the NEC elections, which took place 6 months later, with the same group of people. And what's been really good is, of the 68 seats in Unison on the NEC, we've taken 36 of them, and 17 are brand new to the NEC. And of the 36 people we have 26 are women. There is only 10 men in that group. So, I resent any objection that they elected a man. The majority of people at the NEC that elected the new president were women. The majority of people who voted for me in that meeting. Politics is always the most important thing in the room. Other things come to play, but that's the most important thing in the room. And I bring you fraternal greetings, and to tell you what's going to end now In fact, it ended 3 months ago. I don't think I've been to a Unison NEC meeting in the last 15 years when a senior member of our union hasn't made a comment about Unite's membership figures or said they're our competitors. We must keep watching our competitors. And I hate that expression. It plays no part in anything that I want to achieve in this union. There's only 2 words that, as far as I'm concerned, connect to Unite: brothers and sisters, and that is it. And I saw Rebecca Long-Bailey's speech, which I thought was probably the best speech. I think it was the 2018 Weatherfight Conference. It was probably the best speech at the conference. But what I want to talk about is the politics of it. Now, I'm going to talk about the 2 world wars now. God, what's he going to talk about now? He's probably going to be thinking, well, what's going to keep me going this? Because I don't know what I'm going to say next, so there's no way. The left private industry and capitalists run the economy when they're not worried about what's going on. But as soon as there's a war and something has to be done, they nationalise the railways, they nationalise the coal, they nationalise the transport. Because there's a job to be done then, isn't there? First World War and Second World War. For the majority of people don't realise that the railways were nationalised in the First World War, as was the coal industry. Because you can't, even the armed forces in Iraq or Iran from America, in Iraq, sorry, and Afghanistan, people might make a load of money out of it, but the job's done by people in a nationalised job, aren't they? The armed forces. Because they're there to make money. And the situation we're faced with now is £400 billion that this government has spent over the last 2 years in its mismanagement of COVID, got to be paid back. Yeah. And it's to be paid back in different ways, won't it? You know, fire and rehire, we know what fire is, just about working longer for less. That's all it's about, and a smaller pension. But one of the areas I've got a lot of expertise in, because I've led 3 strikes in it, is the bins. And you don't need to fire and rehire in the bins. The workforce gets cut by 10%, the number of houses in the borough goes up by 10%, and you bully the workforce into emptying the bins. And that's how you achieve more work for less money. And if you look across Britain now, there's bin disputes everywhere. And it's my second pledge today that I want the GMB and Unite and Unison to start calling joint meetings in local authorities. We have no competitors. We only have each other. And sometimes, particularly if you've grown up, been born post 1980, you might grow up thinking what is private now was always private. Well, one of our members died about 10 years ago, and his wife brought the Huddersfield Council yearbook in. I'm branch secretary based in Huddersfield. She brought the Huddersfield Council yearbook into the branch office, and it's a lovely document. It's got like tissue paper between each photograph, and each page on it has got a service that the council provided. And Huddersfield Council in 1954, which was a Tory council, had hospitals, had ambulance service, had police, had fire, had schools, had sewage, had water, had the whole kit and caboodle. Dewsbury Council, the next authority, had its own power station at Ravensthorpe, providing cheap electricity in council houses and care homes. And that's the world we want to be talking about. Because whatever you think about climate change, the prophecies about energy prices in the 1984 miners' strike have come to be true, haven't they? Once somebody's got a monopoly over your energy and you haven't got any, they've got you by the short and curlies, haven't they? And that's, the green conversation is different, and they could have got involved if they wanted to in clean coal if they wanted to. But a miner told me, and I didn't know what he was talking about at the time, he told me, look, Paul, the dispute's not about coal. If we would work for longer hours, for less pay and no pension, the Tories would be opening pits. They've got no interest in a green climate. We are producing twice as much coal in the world now as we were in 1984, just not producing it here. 2,000 miners a year are dying in China, and all China's saying is we've got to increase coal production. We've got to have a world view, haven't we? Not just a national view, we've got to have a world view. And I bring the comments to an end, really. I think them space rockets going up from Bezos Just say on the side of them, you know, that they love sponsorship, don't they? They love sponsoring Olympic Games, they don't like sponsoring. Just say on the side of them, sponsored by workers' wages, workers' health and safety, and workers' pensions, because that's who's sponsoring them space rockets. And we've to sit in a world where people are having their wages cut, their income cut by £1,000 a year on universal credit, and you can be a billionaire in the House of Lords, still be at work, and log in for 10 minutes on your computer into the House of Lords, and you get £162 expenses for logging in. But pensioners can't have £20. It's an absolute disgrace. And I always tell the truth as I see it. And when working people say to me, the problem is, Paul, some people do nothing and they get wages and they're lazy and it's not right. And I say, yeah, but I don't like Prince Charles neither. So, I'll finish on this. I'm really glad to be here today. I'm really glad. And I'm bringing fraternal greetings from the majority of the National Executive Council of Unison. And I'm proud to be saying that, but I'm also proud to be saying I see that the positive unions on the TUC as taking over the majority now. I think a Unite Unison axis will be unstoppable in it's a big battle what's to come. But I am not going to sit there, neither are my brothers and sisters on the Unison NEC. We're not going to sit there and say, oh, there's a dented shield. The shield's been dented from both sides and top to bottom, and I've had enough of being told by millionaires that we need to take less. And I were at a meeting once with a coal miner, and Ian Duncan Smith, when he was the Works Minister, was saying, we need to cut benefit. And my mate, if you've ever worked at Pig, you'll understand this. My mate, or a pit electrician, got up, and they're very much ridiculed pit electricians about not doing much work. And he said to him, well, I don't know why you're talking about hard work. You've never even seen it. He says, I've seen it. I've been right close to it. I've been within 6 foot of it. But it's true, isn't it? Everybody in this room has seen hard work. And most of you have done. I've never done hard work, but I've organised those people who do hard work. And they deserve every sinew of the efforts of the trade unions, because they don't get enough. Let's be absolutely clear. The majority of union members don't get enough out of the union that they should get. We're not an insurance company. I have been branch secretary of Kirklees Union for 32 years. We've had one redundancy in a branch of 10,000. I've done 200 gross misconduct disciplinaries and never had a dismissal. That doesn't mean I'm brilliant. It means the union branch is organised to defend workers. And workers, if you look after them, respond by supporting you. So thank you for inviting me. I'm absolutely adamant over the next 2 years, Unite and Unison will form a progressive, positive axis both in the Labour Party and Unison to change this country and defend us from these people. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Paul. And I can assure you that the leadership of the United Left and the leadership of the Time for a Real Change group in Unison, we've met at the Labour Party conference, and we will have regular meetings, Paul and Andrea. Just Andrea, who is the assistant or the deputy president of Unison, will say a few words just before we go.
I ain't doing this right after Paul. Paul's really, I'm an aide to that.
I'm an aide.
I'm an aide, yeah. Well, he normally corrects me because I do it in my. But I suppose on a practical level, the fight is on, and many of you might have seen things on social media about what's going on. And it's just to say, really, our resolve is stronger now than what it was 12 weeks ago. They are coming through us on the left. We're ready. We're ready for them. They don't bother us. And we've got. And I think when we look about what's going on at the minute in the country, members are looking either at the Labour Party or the trade union help, and working class people are looking for that. And we are determined that our union will start to deliver for members. So like I said, our resolve is strong. Don't believe all you see on social media. And I think there will be much more positive news coming out as the weeks start going on, because you don't win the battle overnight. But we're in that battle. We ain't going nowhere. We've worked hard to get where we're at, and we now want a member-led union. And as Paul said, we look forward to that working, you know, comrades, working together with our goals together. You're not our competitors, and we'll make sure we're standing shoulder to shoulder with you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks a lot, Paul and Andrea. Really good opening remarks, and it's great to hear that sort of message of solidarity from Unison Comrades for a Change, because it's something we haven't heard very much in the past. And someone mentioned the GMB, and I would love for the day when the left in the GMB actually came out of its shell and joined us on this top platform as well. But what I would say, we've got 3 great speakers now lined up about the Green New Deal and about the issues of climate change. And of course, the developments in Unison are brilliant, but there is another good left union out there, which is the PCS union. And we're very proud tonight to have our next speaker is Tracy Hilton from the PCS union. She's the vice chair of the PCS National Black Members Committee. She's an NEC member of PCS, and she's a member of Momentum NCG. So, Tracy, welcome to this United Left meeting, and over to you.
Thank you, everyone. Greetings from the PCS National Executive Committee and PCS Left Unity and Momentum NCG. First, thanks for inviting me to speak. It's great to have the opportunity to speak about something that we all really care about, and to speak with people that are part of a movement that can actually make things happen. Because if people don't care about the future of the planet, then what other planet are they going to live on? It's great to see brilliant trade unionists gathered in the great city of Liverpool, where I live and work today, a city that has so many links to the history of Unite and the trade union movement. Unions dealing with the climate emergency is a challenge, let's be honest. For many, the majority of the younger generation, it's a given that it's actually their #1 issue. And we need to engage with this, not just because they're the next generation of activists, but because it affects all our futures. It's a big topic, and people understandably don't want to process it. But climate emergency affects everything. If we don't address the issue, we will not truly progress anything. As Patrice Lumumba said, never lose sight of an antelope for a dashing squirrel. Because we have a lot going on, but we've got to keep an eye on this planet game, you know what I'm saying? So some of it is about opening up the conversation on climate emergency and getting the issue to connect with ordinary people. There's currently a kind of elitism around people discussing it. It's often academic or patronising. Although there is passionate and inspiring activists like Greta Thunberg who inspired the school strike movement from a lone protest. To connect, we need to show how climate emergency affects everyday lives and how people can get involved to address it, e.g. petrol fumes around school, chemicals in the workplace, etc. And that capitalism just sees ordinary people as collateral damage. The roots to climate emergency are capitalism's ethos of people over profit and the enabling of politicians and governments. Divide and rule is used continuously and effectively to sustain this dynamic. And we see this now with spy cops, kill the bill, scapegoating communities and controlling the mainstream media. All, incidentally, elements of fascism. And building a narrative of contributing hard workers and undeserving welfare claimants, whilst the Panama Papers are filed away and employees' wages are subsidised by tax credits and safety concerns are discarded. As Frantz Fanon said, to educate the masses politically cannot mean making a political speech. What it means is to try relentlessly and passionately to teach the masses that everything depends on them, that if we stagnate, it is their responsibility, and that if we go forward, it is due to them too. Not everyone wants to or is able to attend meetings. We can build understanding and engagement via everyday conversations and get the message across that we can all make a contribution according to our circumstances. Every action, no matter how small it is perceived to be, can contribute to big change. Signing and sharing petitions, articles and event information, suggesting resolutions, all help moving things forward. But for us committed trade unionists, the ideas around the Green New Deal presents us with an opportunity. For us, the Green New Deal gives us the basis to articulate socialist ideas in a meaningful way. It's union members who do the work, who create this world. Therefore, it's us who will be at the forefront for implementing this technology. It needs to work for ordinary people, not the billionaires. We, the left and the union movement, need to make common cause with each other, as Paul has already said. As a union rep in my branch in Liverpool, I know our members are passionate about climate emergency, and we recently passed a resolution on COP26. Many of us are involved locally and nationally in events for that. I've also was involved in community workshops around the issue of climate inequalities with PCS comrades that contributed to the Merseyside Labour Green New Deal plan with a very recently passed and much missed councillor Tim Jeeves, who was a Unite member and very much a driving force within Merseyside on the Green Deal. PCS has a proud history of campaigning on environmental and climate issues in wider society and at the workplace, and after following conference we passed a resolution declaring climate emergency in 2019. Climate change is an issue of economic and social justice. Along with the wider trade union movement, PCS calls for a just transition, which also must be transformative. We want a pro-public approach and public ownership of such things as energy, water, transport, health, social care, education is important. In addition, as black trade unionists, my NEC colleagues, Hector Wesley and Vice President Seat of Holborn, have done extensive work highlighting the links to inequality and climate refugees, as well as supporting campaigns. As well as outside of that, with black activists riding against the cuts, with your own Unite comrade, Donna Guthrie. I've actually been over with food supplies to refugees in Calais. We also advocate that the unions, to increase effectiveness and engagement, we need to have representation in our unions at all levels, reflective of our membership and society. I'm trying to go quick, I'm frightened I'm going to it'll be too long. And I'm having to do it on the phone. I don't normally write my speeches, I normally wing them. But they wanted me to structure it, so here we go. So let me just catch up with myself. Our trade unions, values we hold, are socialist values. The values of collective bargaining, of other workers sticking up for other workers and not leaving them behind. Yet we struggle to engage more than 10% of our trade union movement. We have to ask ourselves why this is. It's down to our methods of organising, it's down to our messaging, and it's down to our lack of outward vision. We need to resist, reclaim, reconnect. Resist legislation and activities that reduce our rights. Reclaim into public ownership those services that I said. Reconnect with the 90% of union members who are not engaging and with our communities. And the proposal of a union TV should be a pillar towards that. We are currently at a defining point in change to our political culture. We've seen democracy being pushed aside to service factionalism, employment law ignored and community organising disbanded. Meanwhile, the Tories have always had an informal community organising via their conservative clubs, hunting clubs, the WI, etc. The Tories are the trade union for employers and billionaires, supporting them to keep wages down and profits up and avoid taxes, enabling them to take trips to the moon. We've seen where those traditional community links have been eroded, but the red wall has fallen. Right-wing politics have moved into that space and built up a connection and gained representation. However, the biggest reach to our communities is via unions, and this goes beyond the workplace, as shown with Unite Community and the work many trade unions do with their communities. We have the infrastructure to build and organise and make gains for our class and for our planet. So, as I mentioned before, Union TV might be a good platform for that, because with apologies to Gil Scott-Heron, the revolution could be televised. We have to improve our methods. We have to communicate how all politicians are not the same, how politics at any level isn't a complete waste of time. To understand that many in the global south are affected, and it is an equalities issue worldwide. As beyond this, those who suffer are the working class and the vulnerable. The alternative industries in the Green New Deal will benefit internationally and at home. Trade unions have the opportunity to lead the Green New Deal revolution. These are big ideas, but we shouldn't flinch, because these ideas are dynamite, and dynamite needs special handling. But if used properly, this green dynamite can cause an explosion in the ideas of the working class trade union left and of what is possible. The trade union movement has excessive access to over 6 million people, and we need to be focusing more on how we're going to address that. Lastly, whatever we're doing, we need to do it better, and we need to start doing it now. I was proud to have been elected onto the NCG of Momentum, and I want to finish by asking a question of you all. We want to work with you in Unite, in Unison, and across the trade union movement. In this hall, the people who are going to bring forward this Green New Deal are you, the people in this hall this evening. As Thomas Sankara said, you cannot carry out fundamental change without a certain amount of madness. In this case, it comes from non-conformity. The courage to turn your back on the formulas, the courage to invent the future. It took the madmen of yesterday for us to be able to act with extreme clarity today. We must dare to invent the future. It's you, it was never going to be anybody else who was going to deal with this. So let's work together. Let's fight for a socialist vision of a better, greener, fairer world, comrades. Unity is our strength, solidarity.
That was really brilliant, Tracy. And if that was a structured speech, you do better unstructured speeches. I can't wait till you get to see the unstructured one. Thanks very much for that. What we're going to do now is move on to our two next speakers. Steve Turner, you may have heard of Steve, I'm not sure if I have to introduce him. I've got down here AGS for manufacturing, one of the main movers between around manufacturing matters in the union, and also he did develop the Green New Deal with Rebecca Long Bailey and was involved in all that in 2017 when the Labour Party started taking radical policies and strategies forward about climate change. So I'm very proud tonight to introduce Steve Turner.
Thanks very much for that, Jim, and your introductions of others as well, Dave. And to all of you, a huge thanks, as always, for everything that you do, everything that you've done, and everything that I know you're going to do, because we always ask you to do more at the end of a meeting, don't we? And we're going to ask you to do more about climate change at the end of this one. But, you know, Paul opened up by saying if only there weren't three. I mean, we've been there before, haven't we? And then Tracy mentioned something about Unite TV, or Union TV, and we've been there before as well. So I think we'll avoid those in my contribution. But in any event, look, we've been on a long journey together, not just about the Green New Deal. I just want to make a few observations. I'm a 39-year, very proud member of the United Left. My political life inside our union comes from my exposure to the broad left in our legacy unions and the United Left since we came together to form the fantastic organisation that's Unite. And we've led the way in so many areas, not just in our union, but in our movement, in the absence of a really strong left movement elsewhere. And that's why I'm so proud that Paul's been able to join us tonight. And, you know, it's just been a fantastic opportunity to listen to you, Paul, and your vision for Unite, the whole team's vision for Unite. Actually, in the new NEC elections there, I'm really encouraged by what's going on. We're all eagerly awaiting the Labour Link elections, because if we can get control, if the left can get control of Labour Link inside Unison, then we're on a real roll when it comes to making a practical difference inside our party, not just on the NEC, but in conference and elsewhere, at every level of our party. And it's not just about our party, it's about politics, isn't it? And politics is not just about party politics, it's about community politics. It's about how we build a confident, determined organisation inside our unions, but inside our communities as well. And Tracy, a huge thanks to you for coming along as well. We all know Mark very well, we got on very well with Mark, of course, another sister union that's been at the forefront of the fight, the struggle, the socialist challenge really, to try and create a movement inside our movement that is very proudly left and is very proudly positive about not just our politics, but a decent, dignified way forward and giving people the confidence to be able to stand up and fight back. And that's what we need more of in our union. We could have had other unions here tonight as well. We're hoping desperately, as Jim said, that the GMB find a bit of backbone at some point, and the left inside the GMB find their way through that, because they're having some difficulties. They've got a new General Secretary as well, of course, and they're going to have some difficulties. And so the left in there is going to have to find its voice and is going to have to organise. Usdaw, we've had good colleagues from Usdaw in the past, in their left, a small left, but their left, that's been making gains. We've got the RMT, of course, good left unions, solid unions. You know, the CWU is a great ally of ours. And that's our movement, and that's the movement that we need to build. So I was really, really pleased that we could get such a broad panel tonight. And you know, we weren't talking about Green New Deal when you were talking, and that was the purpose of the meeting, but it was just a fantastic contribution from all of it. So a huge, huge thanks. And just on the Green New Deal, there's no union that's going to be impacted like, you know, what a great discussion. There weren't too many people came in on the debate, unfortunately, and I think that in part that's because we won the argument inside the union about the Green New Deal and about being proud in our ability, confident in our ability to shape the future of work and that new green economy that we've got to fight for, that puts working class people in our communities centre stage in the debate about what that new economy looks like, what full employment looks like, what a shorter working time looks like, what nationally owned industries look like. All of those debates that we've had inside, not just our manufacturing sections in the union, but right across our union, from local government to civil aviation, our transport sectors, as well as, of course, our manufacturing sectors. We've developed that strategy, and I think that that's really consolidated itself inside our union. And that's why, you know, there was unanimous votes on those motions today on climate change and, of course, the Green New Deal. And we've consolidated our position inside the Labour movement as well. You know, Jim outlined it earlier. We did an awful lot of work with Becky Long Bailey and John McDonnell. John was going to come and join us tonight. He was on another fringe as well, doing something on PR up the road. He was going to come up, but of course the death last week of a Tory MP in Southend meant that all MPs are now on a three-line whip in the House, so none of them were going to be able to make it up to Liverpool. It was unfortunate, because we worked really hard with John and with Becky to develop Labour's strategy. And we've worked, to be fair, with Ed Miliband since then to develop that strategy and to keep that strategy left around the Green New Deal. And Ed gets into trouble inside the party about that, inside the shadow cabinet, and with Keir as the leader of our party. So making sure that we're supporting Ed on his journey to make sure that the Green New Deal stays centre stage and working people in our communities stay centre stage of that discussion inside Labour about green politics and a new green economy is really, really important. No union, you know better than we do, no union is going to be impacted no greater than Unite. These are our members' jobs. There's a lot of fear out there, there's a lot of anxiety out there. It's our members that are drilling oil in the North Sea. It's our members that are involved in open cast mining. It's our members that are involved in refining chemicals, petrochemicals, fuels that we use in our cars, fuels that we use in our homes. It's our members flying aircraft. It's our members on the ground in airports up and down our country. It's our members that manufacture cars. It's our members that manufacture combustion engines. And with the decision today, of course, it's our members that will be developing the next generation of electric drive units at Aylwood. What a fantastic position that was. An announcement today that we've worked fucking hard for over 2 years to get Ford to come to the party, but also to get the government to come to the party with additional funding on skills and investment in new tooling and to compete with other plants. These are global companies with a footprint, and they've got options about where their next big investment is going to go. And their next big investment, believe me, won't come into the UK. And that took intervention, and I want to put on record my thanks to Kevin as the convener there, just less than 10 miles down the road here in Howard, did a fantastic job bringing his workforce with him on that journey to transition from products that they make now that are not going to be used in an electric vehicle to products that are going to be centre stage on export as well as use here in the UK around them electric drive units. And we've done exactly the same with gigafactories elsewhere, both at Nissan, and I was up last week up on north of Newcastle, up in Blythe, talking to a company that's going to build a gigafactory there that's going to produce over 450,000 batteries a year for our auto sector. But more importantly, that's going to employ over 8,000 people on slag pits. That's what they were. And that transition, they called that project Project Phoenix, because out of the ground of the old coal mining communities there will come a mega factory. And that will employ with its supplier park over 8,000 people in good, well-paid, unionised jobs. Unionised jobs, because we've got the agreement before the first brick has gone into the building of that programme. And of course, we've got the agreement that it will be our construction members that will be building that site as well. Because we intervened, we got stuck in early, we had the debate, we were confident about it, and they respect what it is that we do. So nobody is going to be impacted better than us. And this is about a workers' transition, isn't it? If we're going to make people feel confident about a greener economy, we've got to bring people with us. And they earn money now, good money in those dirty jobs, in our steel industry, in our aerospace industry. They earn good money. They've bought homes, they've raised families, they go on holiday, they go on perhaps 2 holidays a year. They've got a car, they've got a standard of living, they've got kids, they've got grandchildren, they're thinking about what their future looks like. And it's really important that we bring people with us on this journey. We ain't going to leave any worker, no workplace, no family, no community behind on our journey. We ain't buying a pig in a poke. We ain't doing what the Tories did to us in the 80s with the mining community, right through to the 90s, devastated it, shut it down in a class attack on one of the most powerful unions of its day. Part of a programme, wasn't just the miners, was it? It was the dockers, it was the printers, it was the steel workers. There was a whole systematic attack on our class, unions that had greater influence beyond their own industries in our movement, and they took them on and they smashed them. And that's what they deliberately attempted to do. And closing the pits was part of that, of course. So we ain't buying a pig in a poke. We're not doing that. We've got to know, we've got to be confident that working people are going to transition. Communities are going to transition. And that's why our Manufacturing Matters programme is so important. Because our Manufacturing Matters, and you discussed it today, so I don't want to raise it again here, but it was about new forms of energy. If we're not going to be drawing oil and gas out of the North Sea, if we're not going to be importing it from Russia or elsewhere, what are we going to be using to generate electricity here? We've got to be investing in hydro. We've got to be doing more on solar and on wind. We've got to have a balanced policy, and that's that difficult debate about nuclear. We've got to have that discussion. The reason that gigafactory is going to Blythe is because while we can't generate hydroelectricity here because the government thinks it's too expensive, we're importing it in a pipeline under the North Sea from Norway. Hydroelectricity is going to power that plant in Blythe. So we have to be investing in all of that, of course. If we're going to replace natural gas from our houses, and we have to do that if we're going to retrofit our homes, and we're going to have hydrogen in there, or we're going to have electricity in there, we've got to have enough electricity to transition our economy, but also our homes and our communities. We've got to start building the 1 million new council houses that we want, and educating our kids, taking them through the proper apprenticeships that they need to enable them to be able to build those homes, get them skilled up, give them hope, give them opportunity, but also retrofit the 27 million other homes that we've got here with goods that are manufactured here in the UK, not just putting import here signs up at docks all the way around our coast. We've got to be more protective about what we're doing with public money. The state needs to invest our money. They haven't got any money of their own. Our money in defending jobs and communities, skills and our people here in the UK. And that does mean that we're going to have to nationalise those commanding heights, as we always used to talk about. We're going to have to nationalise our energy. We're going to have to nationalise our railway. We're going to have to green and clean our towns and cities with hydrogen and electric buses, not on remote sign-on or anything else, but on decent terms and conditions that protect working people and provide a service, a public service to our communities. And that's what we fight for in our passenger sector. That's what our retired members fight for, in linking up with our passenger membership. We've got to make sure that we're doing everything that we need to do around local government, public services, ending 10 years of austerity, making sure that we've got proper services back in our communities. 1 million new green jobs will come in public services. You know, reducing school class sizes, making sure we've got a national care service that looks after our elderly and our vulnerable, irrespective of their age. We've got to make sure that we're investing in the main infrastructure tools of our economy to give hope and opportunity to our kids into the future. And that takes money, but it means employing people in good green jobs, turning the time back on 10 years of austerity politics and getting community services back in again in our local communities. All of this is possible. All of this is possible. Of course it is. Don't let anyone ever tell you that we can't afford it. We can't afford it. We're the 5th richest nation on this planet. These are political choices that are being made. And we need to change the politics around that and make sure the political choices that are being taken represent the interests of our people. And I'll just leave you with this. We always say, I've said for years, we stand on the shoulders of giants. And we do stand on the shoulders of giants. We're incredibly proud of our history. You know, we take too many things for granted, to be fair. But we have an opportunity now. We have an opportunity right now, not just as a union, as a movement. We have an opportunity to be them giants of the future. I want our kids, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren in 30 and 40 years' time, when the history books are being written, to look back on us as those giants and stand on our shoulders, just as we stand on the shoulders of the giants that came before us, because we made a difference. We stood up and we made a difference. We were counted, we were confident, we were determined, and we won. So solidarity, comrades, that's what it's all about. You've got to get stuck in and you've got to win.
Thanks, Steve. Our final speaker tonight is Sakina Sheikh, who's a delegate here from London Eastern region. She's a newly elected Labour London Assembly member, a Lewisham Labour councillor, but most importantly, she's a member of our London and Eastern Young Members Committee. So, Sakina, welcome.
Well, comrades, it's wonderful to be here with you this evening. I definitely feel like quite a pillock for suggesting to go last after that stellar round. I was really saying I thought I'd nick all their clever ideas. Turns out I've got no ideas left. But yeah, what an absolute privilege to be here with you today. And I think I'll just start on the point that Steve made, which is I think we won the argument. I think for those of us who were in conference hall who heard speaker after speaker get up and offer their vision of a Green New Deal, you know, I felt really heartened that actually I think the political argument that it is Unite, it is our unions that define what the green transition will look like, and that this is our topic, this is our business, this is about our workers who will be defining what the future looks like, is not only one, but it is in full force being defined by our members. So I felt really, really like heartened today. I definitely was writing my speech as many of them were speaking, but I think we've heard you know, exactly how our members are going to be part of ensuring that in their workplaces, in their communities, that it is our members that are defining the future. And so for me, the thing that stuck out the most was the speaker that stood up and said, this isn't, you know, a crisis of carbon, this isn't about carbon, this is a crisis of capitalism. And I think that actually finally what the climate crisis is doing is it's giving, you know, not just people in the UK, but around the world, a wake-up call to something the drum about for decades. It's what we're founded on, which is that working conditions of working people are, you know, something that we have constantly had to battle for at every step of the way. And that is because it is a crisis of capitalism. It's an economic system that is rotten to the core. And not only has it made our workers suffer, but it literally is causing the planet to burn. You've literally got the ocean on fire. You've got floods in the UK coming up to people's, you know, absolute front doors. And I think it's really visceral now. People are physically feeling climate change. And so we have to, I think, like Steve said, stay, you know, absolutely like strong on our feet that we won the political argument. I've got to start my timer, so I'm probably going to go 3 minutes over to the gym, or 5 minutes. We've won the political argument and we won't be backing down. So what does that look like? And I loved what you said, Tracy, about daring to dream. I thought that was beautiful. And you know, the explosion and the dynamite and kind of using the moment, because I think we are in many moments of crises, and using the many moments of crises to say, all right, with crisis comes opportunity. And actually, like, let's break down some of those crises, right? Because like actually, and I think you said a lot of this as well, Paul, it's in the moments of crisis is when working class communities in particular and BAME communities and you know, all of the equality strands become disposable. And like you look at the bankers crash in 2008, 10 years of austerity came off the back of that. That was balanced on the back of working people. As a local council in Lewisham, I've had to make some fucking inhumane decisions when you choose between children's mental health services or whether older people get 5 or 10 minutes with their carers because of the bankers crisis. So that crisis, that opportunity, we didn't organise properly. So now that we're in the climate crisis, we must organise unequivocally, fiercely, unconditionally and unapologetically, and we're already seeing that in our conference floor. Our workers are doing that, our reps are doing that, each and every one of you in this room is doing that. So we've heard from Steve about, that economic transformation that's the vehicle. We say that we've got a climate crisis, we want a just transition. If that vehicle, that container, that framing, at the heart of it is economic transformation, but the core of it is our industrial strategy. And what does it look like for us to be defining that industrial strategy? And we've actually already had the answers, so I'm not going to give them to you, because we've said, whether it's manufacturing, why are we importing, whether it's renewable energy infrastructure, when we can be building that here, whether it's buses, whether it's trains, whether it's cars, whether it's engines. We've got the manpower, we've got workers willing and ready to transition to green technologies, so why are we exporting it? Let's be really bloody sensible, and let's be really clear that our industrial strategy, we've got the manpower, we've got the answers, and if we need the skills, then it's about reskilling our workers on their terms. And it's not just about, the idea of what industries or what tech or what skills we bring, but it's the quality of work. The quality of work is gone. I mean, the gig economy, the precarity of work, particularly for young people, like getting up at 6 a.m. And I know that this is actually a full cycle. I was talking to Brian, I've been talking to you, Steve, about turning up and waking up in the morning first thing and being like, have I got a shift? Have I not got a shift? We've actually gone backwards in some of our aspects of work. And not just the precarity of work, but the madness of, again, that kind of disposability and that sacrifice. It was construction workers and delivery workers who never got to lockdown in COVID-19. We all stepped out and clapped for carers because, Boris Johnson likes a show. But actually, the precarity of work means that some workers were outright sacrificed during the pandemic. And to quote Boris, he said, let the bodies pile up. So let's never let him forget that. So the heavy lifting shouldn't be coming from our communities. It should be coming from government. Fossil fuel companies are still being subsidised. They still get to pay less tax. They still get money from the government. Whilst the government makes a big hoo-ha about COP26 and Glasgow and our green ambition, stop subsidising fossil fuel companies. And actually, each and every one of us can go back into our communities and knock on our local council's door and say, do our pension funds, if I've worked in the council and you look after our pension funds in our local government, is that invested in fossil fuel companies? Because if so, we want it out. And fossil fuel divestment, and we're talking about millions and billions, we're actually talking about billions of pounds invested in fossil fuel companies. So let's hit them where it hurts. Let's be really frank about that. We should be divesting from fossil fuel companies, and we should be calling on the government to do the heavy lifting. This shouldn't be, again, like the crisis in 2008, the bankers' crisis was balanced on the backs of people. The climate crisis cannot be balanced on the back of working people again. Taxi drivers, workers, anyone who has to adapt the way that they live their life, their earnings, they shouldn't be subsidising this crisis. They should be getting state money to make that transition, and that's why, again, it must be on our terms, and there must be an industrial strategy at its absolute heart. So we've already talked as well about nationalisation, and I think, again, in times of crises, whether, that was after the Second World War, and we did see the formation of the NHS, and we did see a huge programme of council housing building, because people understand the importance of collectivity, and now more than ever, post-COVID, they do, right? There was 2,000 mutual aid groups that were started up across the UK because people understood that even though we have our institutions, whether that's government or local government, that the first people who can act and the people with the most knowledge are your neighbours. And actually that one person not having dinner tonight is equivalent of you not having dinner tonight, that actually we are our brother and sister's keeper. And mutual aid groups filled that gap. Almost every street in the UK, you had people making sure their neighbours had food on the table. Before government could get into that space, 2 weeks there was this space where mutual aid groups filled the capacity to organise because they have the knowledge, they have the passion, and actually at its heart we do believe in solidarity, we do believe in connectivity. So now that people have felt what that solidarity looks like on a very visceral life and death level, let's bloody get into that space and organise in it and say, well, that solidarity that you had as a mutual aid group, that you had during the COVID pandemic, let's build on that, let's unionise, let's politicise those spaces and say, actually, together in solidarity, we are so unstoppable and our strength is so powerful. So let's make sure that we do that. And I think that, that story, and I think this is what the right do a lot better than what the left do. We kind of get stuck on statistics sometimes, but the right tell a story. And when you tell a story, you have that dynamite, you have that ability to vision, you get people to feel. When you things, and they weren't huge bills at the end of the month that felt really, compromising of our living conditions. So nationalise. I think we, especially since we saw Ed come out and say Ed Miliband, that is, in the Labour Party, said that he's all for it, and then I think we saw a little bit of backstepping on that. So let's keep marching forward on that one. And then a couple of other points. So grounding and living conditions, and I think this was one of the motions that was on conference floor today, and I thought it was really fantastic that we had integrated it into conversation, which is like fuel poverty. And I think that exactly, we've heard from Paul, Tracy, Steve, and I'm sure I've heard it from you as well, Jim, like everyone on this panel, that this is not just like climate crisis, it's not just climate change, it's about social justice, it's about economic justice, and that's why we say climate justice, because this is inherently, like we said, about a rotten economic system. And people feel it most viscerally when you're saying you're choosing between eating and heating. That's wild. In the 5th richest country in the world, people are choosing between eating and heating. So fuel poverty is actually a really smart way, I think, of politicising people by saying that, like, if we retrofit your house, that's a way of taking climate action that's really strategic and clear locally. But it's also a way of showing people this climate emergency that I think someone said it on the panel can feel kind of academic and sometimes a bit detached. It's actually about people's living conditions here and now. So I think localising it in people's living conditions. And then last but not least, the kind of theme of what I wanted to say, which is like using this as an opportunity to build. We've heard from Steve, we've won the political argument, so now let's organise and now let's build, especially in our unions, because I think membership, and I don't think it's any secret, but of our young members in particular in trade unions, is not as much as it should be. We should have more young members organising in our unions, and actually a lot of young members, they are really inspired. They have that dynamite, that energy around climate issues. So let's use our action, let's use our organising locally, whether that's retrofitting, whether that's fossil fuel divestment, whether that's organising in our workplaces so we can build industrial strategy from the ground up, to organise young people and also get them in our union so that our union is at its core stronger and stronger as we march on and win a Green New Deal for workers. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for that, Sakina. We're going to open it up to the floor, questions, comments, observations from the floor. Before I do that, if you're not a member of the United Left, you can contact us on www.unitedleft.org.uk. If you got one of the brilliant leaflets we put out, there's something called a QR code, which I found out about 2 days ago, right? Which takes you directly, Chris is looking at me now, which takes you directly to our application for a membership, yeah? And the reason I'm saying that is not because we've gone high-tech, is that we forgot to get the clipboards to take your names and addresses on a bit of paper as you walked in the room, yeah? So we're on a learning curve here, colleagues, but we're getting there, okay? So it's again, www.unitedleft.org.uk, okay? So with that, if anyone wants to come in with any questions or comments, if you'd like to put your hand up. Well, it's a bit like policy conferences. Okay, we've got 4 comrades. I'll start with the sister here. We'll go to the 2 comrades in the middle, and then I'll come back.
Jim, Paul and Andrea have got to leave. So if anyone has a quick question for them specifically, that might be helpful.
That would be really useful. So I didn't realise that. Sorry. So before we come back to those comrades, does anyone want to address anything to comrades from Unison?
Yeah, order.
George, yeah, come on in, George.
You're going to mind, George.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
What I want to say to is you on?
Yes. Don't switch it off. It's on. Just stick into it.
What I want to say to our comrades from Unison is yeah, it's great, to talk in terms of this sort of thing, particularly within the jobs that we're talking about. You mentioned the bin strikes and whatever. Yeah, I mean, obviously in our region, it's becoming more and more prevalent. The one thing that we've had to do, obviously, is the union conflicts between the
not just the Queen's, but it seems to emanate from them, a lot more than it does any other particular trade. What annoys us to an extent is that, unfortunately, the Unison comrades, as few as they are, and I have to say that, as few as they are within these particular industries, from the old Noopy days, because that's where they come from, the old Noopy days. In Sandwell, when I was convener there in all unions, we knocked that on the head. But unfortunately, it's now bounced itself back within Unison because of the link between Emmanuel and the office side, the union itself, and it seems to have had an effect. But the big problem with that is that a number of the branches within our region who are sort of local authority based, as you know.
George, it's a question, not a statement. Just there's other people wishing to speak. Yeah, well, let's get to
the question being that because of the autonomy of the semi-autonomous way that your branches operate within the local authorities, is there anything that is being done regarding that particular side of your union, which does create a problem when they're dealing with us, because we deal on a more of a regional and a national basis?
Thanks, George.
Is that enough?
Yeah.
He's moving the composite.
Anyone else? For Unison?
No, just.
Not talking, because we've got to go in a minute.
So, Paul, if you could just briefly reply to George's statement.
Donna Guthrie, Community Youth Work Not-for-Profit and the London East region. Just to say that I want to thank the Unison comrades for coming along today. Actually, I've been a trade union activist, anti-fascist and anti-racist campaigner for several decades now, and I actually cut my trade union teeth in Unison. I've been as far as being branch chair of Unison branch in Hackney College, but I was in Unison local government as well before that. I did London wage strikes. I was known as a troublemaker by my bosses, chief execs of my councils that I worked for. And I know that in local government, as well as other areas, like for example in education, I worked for UCU, as well as being a Unite activist and member. I work for UCU, and we've got higher education strike ballot action taking place starting this week. And I know in some of our areas, our industries, we do need collective strength to fight the bosses. And we talked tonight about collective strength to fight, capitalism. So it's really, really important that we have our comrades from the other big unions and that we build a unity and strength together. I was going to talk later, but I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not offended by the other trumpet festival. It's a completely legitimate question. Both unions are structured differently. Their history is different, and certainly up in Yorkshire and Lancashire, I don't know what it is down south of Nottingham really. But often the traditional days of the bins are in house. Where often the further south you go, they're not the viola or circo or whatever they are. But certainly the traditions of the union are different. And you would go a long way to find a depot that's all in one union. And it is a problem. When we had a strike in Huddersfield 3 years ago in Kirklees, where I am, we balloted and Unite didn't, but they didn't not ballot because they didn't want to. We couldn't structure it together right. But the Unite workers didn't go in, and then it's a debate in it about strike pay. Strike pay is different. It causes troubles, doesn't it, in different unions. And that's about talking to each other. And I'm not just giving you a politician's answer, because we don't talk to each other. We make personal comments. You haven't, but we make personal comment. Oh, so and so don't want to strike, or so and so don't want to win, or that union's crap. And that's what's got to go, isn't it? Yeah. If there's a problem in the West Midlands region, then that's the debate that's to take place between Unite and Unison there, to iron them things out. Now in Kirklees, what we did was, we organised that the people who were on strike in Unite, it make any difference how we did this, got the money. They didn't go in, nobody went in, nobody crossed the picket line, nobody went to the depot. But you have to sort it out, haven't you? You can't ask for people to make an extra special sacrifice. And so I give you this pledge from Unison that we'll talk about it and we'll get there together. Because if you want to get there, you will. And I really, really believe in that. So I hope that's all right.
Thanks.
Okay, colleagues, thanks for coming tonight. Great to see you, and we'll meet again. Great to see Paul here tonight. So, again, I think there were 3 speakers with their hands up before that, the sister at the front, and then the 2 comrades in the middle here.
Hello, comrades. Angela Dewden, North East Yorkshire and Humber, and I'm from local government sector. It was really I might be going off on a tangent here, but I wanted to pick up on something that Tina said about young people and young members and getting them involved. Now, I know that we're at a pivotal stage for young people in this country, and the climate crisis has particularly grabbed them. I've got a 13-year-old granddaughter, and she's absolutely passionate about the climate crisis. They're talking about it amongst the friends, they're talking about it at school. They're really, they are so enthused by it. My granddaughter was writing letters to our MP about the climate crisis. I don't know where she gets it from. What I'm sort of concerned about is that young people now do not know what trade unions are.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
My grandchildren do, obviously. In general, young people do not know what trade unions are. And I feel we've got that huge gap between this 13-year-old who is very passionate about something that she doesn't quite know yet is political. Yeah, how do we capture them before the sort of, it's almost like they get to 18, they start work, and then, that's when a union may or may not be introduced. We need to do something as a union to capture young people. We need to get young people involved. And I'm not just talking about from 18, I'm talking about younger than that.
Thanks a lot. We had 2 brothers in the middle there, in the room. They just come around with a rope and
Switched on.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, Surrender Kumar from AIM Risk and Risk. Sister just spoke about youngsters. Yeah. Okay, sorry, can you hear me better now? Right, no. Right, Surrender Kumar from Risk and AIM. Our youngsters, they're not into union, as we have just gathered that, yeah? We need to capture them. And the main thing is media. And the media is controlling everything. Now, if we do not start our own digital media, TV has been mentioned so many times, right? What is our plan? Are we actually going to do something about it, or are we just going to talk about it? Are we going to get together with other unions to establish a channel so we can start teaching our youngsters? We're going to start doing that. If we don't do that, the older generation is slowly fading out. Eventually, we will all leave this planet in whatever format is going to be left. So we're going to get them now. So is there a future plan? Or if there is a future plan, have the unions got together and even spoken about it? That is my question, basically.
we'll take a couple of questions or comments. So I think the brother sitting just to your right, I think, had his hand up earlier. Changed his mind. Okay. So is there anyone else wish to come in? And okay, sister at the front. Anyone else after that? Okay, we'll take the sister at the front.
Good evening, comrades. Good evening. I would like to carry on what this comrade said. this comrade said. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I agree with everything you said, but my point of view is that we started at school.
Yes.
They can take religion in, they can learn French. So where is it they learned about true life, about politics? Without politics, you can't get nowhere. You can have any education you want. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm a black country wench, and I believe that education starts the day you start school. They've got to be led where they come from. Why are we so strong in what we believe in? Because we know it's going to happen to them. We know it's going to happen to them, but we've got to get them prepared for this, not just at college, from nursery. And I agree with everything you said.
Thank you, Sister.
Thank
Amelia.
Okay, colleagues, I think that was the last speaker tonight. So what I'd like to do, I'll just take the three comrades on the top table and we'll take them in a reverse order perhaps that they spoke. So we'll start with Sakina, we go to Steve, and Tracy, you can have the last word on the table.
I see what I sit for this. Yes, I think like the main kind of question from all of the speakers seemed to be about organising young people. I'm afraid I don't have the golden bullet. I'm going to put it out there straight away. I don't have the answer, but people do have the answer. I think young people probably have the answer. So I think it's about asking at all times how many young people are in our spaces, and when they are there, how inclusive are we of them, of their views, their opinions, and how much space do we give them to grow and skill them up. But not also skill them up, but appreciate that they come with a lot of knowledge and skills as well, and make space for them to be active. So I think inclusivity in our spaces is really important. And more often than not, when people often ask me how do we make our BAME spaces more inclusive, I say, well, what's on your agenda, and is there anything for the BAME community on your agenda? Because if it is, then you'll see more BAME people in the room, I reckon. So I think it's similar about young people as well. And I think to answer that question, a lot of what we've been saying around climate justice and climate action. And so I agree with you. I think it should start at schools. I think that's a slightly different approach to the conversation around climate change. I think
we just start at school because I know full well my grandson is 8.
Yeah.
It's only 8.
Yeah.
And he's on the committee at school.
What, the school council?
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
only
the school
8.
council. No, I completely agree with you. I'm basically saying I agree.
And he brought it up there about climate change.
Exactly.
He's only 8.
Exactly. So I think uniting schools is important and fantastic, and should be encouraged and grown. And maybe even think about how our young members committees can help support uniting schools, because I think young people probably are well connected to even younger people. I mean, my sister, who's a lot younger than me, probably would laugh at the idea that I'd be described as a young person in this room, frankly. I don't have an Instagram account, so to her I'm ancient already. But just with the climate crisis stuff, so thinking about Green New Deal groups locally, we heard about Merseyside Green New Deal, but they're also Croydon Green New Deal. There are Green New Deals across the group. What would it look like for our local Unite branches to link up with local Green New Deal spaces and see what kind of activism can be there? Or even fossil fuel divestment. Again, there'll be fossil fuel divestment groups locally. What would it look like for Unite groups locally to link up there? But also retrofitting. So NEF, the New Economics Foundation, a really fantastic event that Jim recently organised that I went to. We had a fantastic comrade called Aidan Dickadam, who works at the New Economics Foundation, NEF, and he was talking all about a campaign he's starting around retrofitting of housing. And again, it's a really specific action that can be taken locally that can help politicise new people, and young people are looking for different ways of taking climate action. So I think there's lots of ways that we can link up to work that's already been done and use the climate crisis as a way of politicising and bringing people into the union, and by saying we're actually the body that should be leading this transition with the best place and with the ones with all the solutions. So not all the solutions, but the space to create the solutions. So let's do that together.
Okay, thanks, Jim. That was I could reverse what you said earlier, actually, because what can I say to follow that? In terms of young people, this has been an eternal problem, hasn't it? We've all been young in our times. I think we need to get ourselves in a place where we not just understand, but we're talking to and we're relevant to young people, and that means being in workplaces with them, organising in sectors where they're organising,
being in workplaces where they are, and for too long we haven't been there. It's been too difficult to organise workers in very difficult, precarious sectors. The hospitality industry and in other areas, we've sort of stood clear of it. We've done very, really hard work, really good work on the ground in a number of regions. The London region, for instance, and Dave Turnbull and all the work. Brian Simpson's doing some great stuff in Scotland. We've got individual pockets of good organisation trying to talk to young people where young people are working, but that's not a unified strategy across the union, and it's been a bit difficult to have that discussion. But I think we will get to that place now. I think we need to be emphasising, our ability to be able to not just talk to and relate to, but to organise young workers into trade unions. It's incredibly important that discussion is not taking place in the home like it used to take place in the home, but it needs to take place in the home. It needs to take place in our communities. We need to be relevant and addressing the issues that are really important to young people. I mean, I've got 3 kids at home, they ain't going nowhere. I live in Lewisham, where she's one of my councillors. But I've got 3 kids at home, they ain't going nowhere unless I pitch a tent in the local park and kick them out. I mean, they've got no hope. I mean, no hope. They're going anywhere. I mean, they can't rent, they can't buy, they can't do anything. They're just stuck at home, with me and my other half, so driving us all nuts. But the reality is, decent jobs. We've got a decent jobs crisis right now. It's precarious work. Their whole entry into work is not into organised, decent, well-paid, unionised jobs. I started work as a 19-year-old on London buses, and it was unionised. It was a closed shop in reality. It wasn't just unionised. You had to be a member before you started work there. You signed up on your way in, and that's the reality of it. But that's not there now. So we've got to get back to organising and being relevant to young people on the issues that are relevant to them. But we have got a fantastic Uniting Schools programme, and it appears to me that we perhaps don't sell that as well as we should. It's a great programme that involves our activists, our young members, our community organisers are responsible for it in each of our regions. We don't do it in Scotland because the STUC in Scotland runs its own programme. They do the same with the Irish Congress as well. But in all the English regions and in Wales, we have a great Uniting Schools programme. And the 2 most popular subjects that we get into schools to talk to young people about are about racism and about climate. And we've got a whole series of educational videos and programmes and workshop tools, all sorts of stuff. And we train up our reps, our activists, don't have to be a rep, our activists, to go in and run these sessions. So if you want to get involved in that, just get involved in that. Make contact with your local community coordinator, go for your regional secretary, whoever you need to engage with in order to open that programme up to you and offer your services. Because I think it's a fantastic thing that we do. There's a lot of discussion around digital tools, and we had the debate in the election campaign, didn't we, about Unite TV. Using digital platforms, digital tools to be able to better communicate with people, find new avenues to bypass the established press that will never work in our interests, of course. These are all owned by multi-billionaires, not just billionaires, and their interests will never be shared with ours. So we have to find a way in which we can reach people on their own, in their own language, with people that look and talk like them, of their own age, talking about real live issues that are relevant to them on platforms that they're on. And we can invest in that. That's relatively small amounts of investment. It's not a big 24-hour TV station. It's very practical things that we can do on social media platforms that are already there, actually, to make sure that we're doing what we need to do to reach people in their own environments, rather than waiting for them to come to us. And then when they do come to us, of course, we try and put square pegs in round holes, don't we? We try to get them to conform to our structure. So how does a young member get active outside of the young member structure itself? When you've got to be Rule 6 compliant, when you've got to be a shop steward. Well, how many young people can be shop stewards? When they're going into work in organised workplaces where we've got a good established steward structure already, it can't become a branch officer because we've got established branch officers and all that. So how do we open up our structure, make it more fluid, make it more engaging, make it more interesting for people and available for people to participate in, and have these sorts of debates? And that's what I think the United Left can play a big role as well. It's not just about what the union formally can do, it's about what we do. How do we maintain our position as that leading light in our movement inside our union, having these sorts of discussions, having an open framework about how we involve as many people as we can in the debate. We're not just about reps, are we? We're not just about stewards. We're about anyone that wants to participate in the debate about the future of our union, and how we build that platform to make us relevant across communities, in society, and change the world. That's why we're here, isn't it? Because it's why we trade unionists. So we don't just want a better life for ourselves. We care and we want to change the world very often. And that's what a lot of young people want to do. So there are ways in which we can do a lot of that if we just engage in a different way. So there's a whole platform out there, I think, for us to build upon in order to not just be relevant, but to really start a powerful movement, that civil and social movement that's going to be so important to us to do anything that we want to do. On climate change, on new housing, on a new economy, on full employment, on short working time, on decent jobs, or whatever it is, whatever those challenges are, we've got to be at the heart of that debate inside our communities and workplaces.
Well, the joy of always being the last one to speak is that you can just kind of say, well, I agree with everything. So let's not repeat that. I'm pleased to hear about, in particular, the stuff being done at the schools that Steve was on about, because that's central. I will say is when I first started work, and I'm not going to tell you when that was, my mum's dad, my granddad, was a member of the NUM, and the first thing he said to me, mind you, join the union, and this doesn't happen anymore. My daughter now, who I know you'll find this hard to believe, who is 26, is flitting about different jobs in the call centres, and obviously because I'm a mum, she gets the same thing, join the union, so she's in the CWU. But it's about having those conversations to normalise. You know, when you're in the house with children, young people, to hear you talking about the union in a positive way. And I've discussed before about how that loss of the link with the unions and communities has had awful impact in the Red Wall, because in 1984, I was old enough to remember there was a miners' strike, and then, you know, we still had miners' halls. There was so much organisation. You had the miners' wives. There was so much organisation done in the communities then that people understood the link with the union and the community and what it could do with them. And we don't have that anymore. So we need to be visible in our communities. And through Unite Community, you can do that. And you can do stuff like events, and you can turn up and support the school strikes. But you can think about things like competitions, and get yourself to the colleges and catch them just before they go into that workspace, to say, you know, the importance of how, you know, good it is for them. Because what we do have is we've got really well-educated young people going into the workplace now, and a load of crappy jobs available to them. But there are those who are aiming for the ones that are kind of pitched at their educational level, and once they go into there, and they kind of think, well, I've got a degree, or I'm getting in this job, and I'm at this grade, I earn such amount of money, I don't need to join a union. I'm kind of management, or a man. So we need to kind of get across to them about the importance, because at the same time, when they come a crupper, it's, as we know, it's a bit too late. It's like, well, you only just joined the union now, this started happening months ago. So we need to kind of get those messages about the wins across, and have socials, and to make that connection from the communities to the people, and that's how we're going to bring everybody forward with us. So I'll just leave it with that, because I can't think of any more African philosophy quotes off the top of my head. But I'll give you one from Malcolm. By any means necessary, comrades.
Thanks for that, Tracy. And I think on that, by any means necessary, I think that's a great place to finish the meeting. Can I thank Sakina, Steve, Tracy, and the two comrades that from Unison earlier spoke. It's been a great meeting. I think it was a good debate. It's a shame it didn't go on a little bit longer, but I think someone did say that's because we won the argument. I think, you know, we were pushing on an open door this morning. So, see you in the conference. Let's have a great conference as well, as long as it lasts. I think we're up to Thursday morning already, aren't we? I love a chair who can do that, I tell you. So see you there, comrades. See you in the morning. And yet again, if you want to hear any more or find out any more about United Left, it's www.unitedleft.org.uk. Thanks for coming tonight, comrades. Brilliant. See you later in the bar, mate.